And so we are in week 3 of Statistically Speaking, and we've jumped into these stats that, I don't know, if you're anything like me, they're quite frightening and a little bit scary. These statistics are about Canadian people, Canadian families, Canadian marriages, people struggling with Canadian money. And today's stat is no different. We're talking about Canada, and it was troubling to find out that 50% of people are discontent with their life and the success that they find themselves in or that they don't have. And the stats are alarming, and it's kind of depressing when you look at the stats because it seems like all the stats are against us. But our theme verse for this series is found in Romans chapter 8, drawing your attention to verse 31. It reads like this: "If God is for us, who could be against us?" And so, yes, the statistics are against us, but what we know to be true, what we know the promise of God says is that God is for us. And so what statistic could be against us? Now, maybe you relate with this, but I was trying to find the person in the Bible who would feel like they have everything against them, that the stats were stacked against them, that they always had to compare themselves to someone else. And here's who I found. Actually, better yet, let's roll this clip. Check it out.
Reading the Bible, found out Jesus had a little brother. Anybody know his name? James. When I read that, I was like, how much pressure was that? Jesus, your big brother? How many times did you have to hear, why come you can't be more like Jesus, James? Because everybody probably thought that James could do the same thing Jesus could do, but he couldn't. He was just James. He wasn't James Christ. Remember the wedding banquet? Jesus turned water into wine. Everybody was amazed, but they don't tell you about the next banquet. Jesus left early. They started running out of wine. Everybody looked at James. It's like, man, last time this happened, your brother made some wine, dude. You just gonna stand there with your sandals on? You're not gonna... Can you make some Kool-Aid or something, man? You're not gonna do anything? And James had problems just like any other kid had problems. He tried to follow his big brother around. So everywhere Jesus went, James followed him. That's what little brothers do. So if Jesus went there, so did James. I bet one time, James almost drowned. Oh, you just got that joke just now, didn't you? Jesus walked on water and James tried to just went. I'm sure James had problems. He would go to his parents with his problems. And his parents, especially his mom, was trying to throw him a bone once in a while. They'd pray over their food. They're like, Lord, we just thank you for this food. In James' name. James had problems. He would go to his parents with his problems, and you know what they would say? He'd be like, well, what would Jesus do, Then they gave him a bracelet. And then he started selling those bracelets, Made some money selling bracelets. What would be cool is a what would James do bracelet, right? Same initials, different meaning. Completely different meaning. You driving down the street, you get cut off in traffic. You fuss him out, your pastor gonna be like, yo, you got a what would Jesus do bracelet on? You're like, that's what would James do.
Oh man, that is hilarious. And James, man, what he must have felt being the brother of Jesus. And we are all asking this question, what defines success in our lives? Is it trying to be somebody else, or is it trying to figure that out ourselves? And so if we go over to the board here, how could we classify that? I mean, some people, they would define success in their career, right? And so I want to climb the career ladder, and I've achieved this level of success with that. Or maybe you would define success in my life as successful because of my health, right? And so I'm a healthy individual. I look after my body. I eat well. And so I feel successful with that. Or maybe you would define it in this way, and you would say that success is related to my family, right? And so my family, they all get along, and we are able to gather around Thanksgiving table and the Christmas table and the Easter table, and we see each other, and we love each other. And so you might define success in family or a family situation, or you might define it in influence, right? And so you are an influential person. You are kind of a board member of some organization, or you influence other people. And so you're feeling good because you've defined success as influence or being able to influence other people. But see, what I've found is that no matter what you find as success or how you would define success in your life, I guess what I've found is that people are asking this one question as it relates to success in their lives. And the question is this: I want my life to matter. I want my life to matter. And how can I actually make my life count? How can I make my life matter? How can I make my life mean something? And I guess as we look at this measure of success today, or defining success, or answering that question, how can we make our lives matter? I would turn to the book of Ecclesiastes, all right? In the book of Ecclesiastes, we have an individual. They are writing this note here, and I'll tell you who it is in a minute, but let me just give you an encouraging passage of Scripture here today as we start things off. It's Ecclesiastes chapter 1, drawing your attention to verse 2 to 11. It reads like this: meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Generations come, generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises, the sun sets. It hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and it turns to the north. It goes round and round, ever turning, returning on its course. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one can say, look, there's something new? It was here already. Long ago. It was here before our time. No one remembers the former generations, and even those yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. How is that for encouraging? How is that for an encouraging passage as we start our Sunday morning teaching off here together? I mean, the author is describing kind of what we just listed in our statistic here today. Like meaningless, just everything seems meaningless. Like I get up, I go to work, I come back home, it's the same old thing, and it's a struggle for me because I feel almost depressed in that situation. And I'm asking the question, like, what is the point to all this stuff, right? What's the point of doing this? Well, the individual who's writing this is actually Solomon, who's the son of David. And this is a very influential person. This guy's like at the top of his game. He has many, many, many wives. At the time, that was a sign of influence, all right? He has all the wealth he could ever want. He can do anything that he wants. He's very powerful, more powerful than any other person at the time. And yet here he's writing this kind of text saying everything's meaningless. What's the point of all this? I'm still not happy, I'm still not satisfied, and I still want my life to matter, but it feels like it doesn't count. It doesn't matter at all. Which brings me to Jesus. Now, Jesus, we're going to learn from this thing that he says here today. It's found in the book of Matthew, chapter 16, and it is an incredible little message that he speaks to his disciples. And what I love about this particular story that we're going to read here today is that it's plopped into the timeline of Jesus' life, but it's almost like it doesn't really fit. There's a whole bunch of things happening before it and after it, but this little story takes place in the midst of it, and it doesn't seem like it belongs. But we're going to jump in there anyway. But before we do, let me set it up. And so we have Jesus, And this story takes place in Capernaum, and he's in Capernaum. Capernaum is on the north shore of the Sea of Galilee, and he is there, and when he's there, he gets word that his friend, John the Baptist, he got his head cut off. And you can imagine how that would feel. I mean, that's a troubling kind of thing for Jesus, but he knows he needs to teach. He knows he needs to do the Father's will, and so he goes out, he teaches, a whole bunch of people come. In fact, 5,000 men, approximately 20,000 people come to hear him speak, and we have the miracle of feeding the 5,000, right? In fact, it's feeding the 20,000 with a few loaves, a few fish. And after that, we kind of see him walking on water, the miracle of Jesus walking on water. We see Peter kind of wandering out there, as we heard earlier, right? And he goes out there and he walks on water. And then we see Jesus kind of going over to the coast of the Mediterranean. And there he heals a boy who is demon-possessed. And he pulls a demon out and he heals this boy on the coast of the Mediterranean, a few hundred miles away. And I don't know if you ever picture Jesus in your mind's eye, but here's what I want you to do, or here's what you need to do. You need to picture Jesus with giant calves, all right? This guy has giant calves because he walks everywhere. And this story here today, it actually takes place in the town called Caesarea Philippi. And I don't know if you know, but that is a couple hours north of Capernaum, north shore of Sea of Galilee. A couple of hours walking straight up into the mountains. And you can picture Jesus. He actually wants to go on a little bit of a retreat. He wants to go on a field trip in the midst of all this healing and all these miracles. And he pulls his disciples together and he says, we're going to go up to Caesarea Philippi. And there, we're just going to have a little talk. See, Caesarea Philippi is kind of a wacky place. It is a spiritually oppressed place. People are worshiping all kinds of things in all kinds of weird ways. And this is where Jesus decides to take his field trip with the disciples. And he goes to Caesarea Philippi, and he needs to talk with them about something going on in his life and what he plans to do moving forward. And I don't know if you've ever had one of those weird conversations with someone that you love, or it's a coworker, or it's a friend or family member, and the circumstances around the conversation, you realize that what is about to be said is extremely important. Because of that, you kind of weigh in and you tune in to exactly what someone wants to tell you. This is what's happening with this conversation. It's not a normal conversation. And Jesus is kind of honing in with his disciples. And he looks at his disciples after they've witnessed all these miracles. After they've seen all this stuff take place. And Jesus looks them square in the eye. And he asks them this question: who am I? Who am I? And the disciples answer him. They say, well, some think that you are an amazing prophet. And some say you are an incredible teacher. And some say this, and some say that. And Peter, the guy who walked on water, he pipes up and he says this: I think that you are the Christ. And that word Christ in Greek is the same word as Messiah in Hebrew. And Messiah in Hebrew, what it means is that you are the anointed one. You are God. You are God in flesh. You are God in human form. You are the Messiah. You are the Christ. You are the anointed one. And this is the first time recorded in the Bible where Jesus is listed as God. Someone calls him out as God. The first time it's recorded. And Jesus, he looks at them and he says, well, I'm glad you know who I am. I'm glad that you know that, because I'm going to tell you something that is going to blow your minds. And the disciples, you can imagine them. They'd be like, are you kidding me? Like, I've seen you walk on water. I've seen you raise people from the dead. I've seen you cast out demons. I've seen you feed 20,000 people with nothing. Like, now you're saying you're going to show us something that's going to blow our minds? Like, that already does blow our mind, because I don't know, we can't even picture what that would actually be. And Jesus looks at them and he says, I am going to build my church with people that say I'm the Christ. You see, what you need to understand is that the people who follow Jesus are normal people. They're like you, they're like me. They have regular jobs. They need to go to the grocery store. They need to buy clothes. Their kids go to school. I mean, they're just normal people. And for these people, Jesus is talking to, these disciples that he's talking to, you see, their lives have changed since they've begun to follow Jesus. In fact, now when these guys, these entourage of Jesus, when they walk into a town, people know their name. People open their homes for them. People cook them dinner. People give them clothes. People help them out. You're with Jesus? Oh yeah, we know about you. What's it like to be with him? What's it like to be a part of his entourage? We know that Jesus is famous. We heard that he raised someone from the dead. We heard that he walked on water. We heard that he fed the 5,000. We heard these things. What is that like? You see, these people had never experienced that type of recognition or that type of fame ever before. And so they were living on a high. I mean, things were going well for them. And Jesus looks at these guys who now have a reputation where before they didn't have necessarily a reputation. And he says to them, but before I share with you what he says to them, I need you to think like a disciple. I need you to think not like you're thinking now, but maybe like a disciple would think back then. You've come a long way. Jesus is casting vision like a boss. I mean, he is planning out the future. And we are going to build this thing. And it's going to be amazing. And they're giving high fives. They're so pumped about this. Yes, Jesus. Yes, Jesus. And we are popular now. Things are going really, really well. And then we pick up the passage in this scripture in Matthew chapter 16, 24 to 26. Watch this. Here's what it says. Very powerful. Then Jesus says to his disciples, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. And these guys look at Jesus and reflecting about all the things that they've gone through. And that statement, the wind is taken out of their sails. Follow me meant follow me to a life of significance, they thought. Follow me meant follow me to a life of recognition, they thought. Follow me meant follow me to a life of when I walk into a city, people know my name. People know what we're about. People know who we're with. That's what follow me meant to the disciples at the time. And Jesus says, we are going to do something great here, and here's how we're going to do it. All of you guys, I want you to say no. I want you to say no to yourself. And I want you to pick up your cross and follow me. And if I'm a disciple, and I've gone all this way, and I've walked all this way, and I've seen all that I've seen, and I'm sitting in this city, the spiritually oppressed city, and Jesus is saying this, it's kind of like a line has been drawn in the sand that he's drawing. And he's saying it's this way or no way. And for me, if I'm picturing myself, if I'm in that position that the disciples are in, I'm thinking to myself, you've lost me. Like I can't say no to myself completely. It's not really what I was picturing. It's not really what I bought into. And you want me to go through with saying no to myself, to pick up my cross? I know what that means. It means I die. And that's what you want me to do, Jesus? You see, the line's been drawn, and for me, at the moment, I'm not all in. Unless you have something real powerful to say to me that can draw me back. And Jesus says this in verse 25. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. In other words, the harder you try to save your own life, the more you're going to lose it. In other words, the more you try to achieve success, the more you will be unsuccessful. See, we try to build. We try to create. We try to hold on to successful lives. We try not to be a statistic. And our answer is that if I could only get better health and a better family and better money and better career and better house and better car, if I could only get these things, and hold on to these things, then I will feel successful. But Jesus is saying that's not the purpose. And if that's not the purpose, what now? See, you got to look at what Jesus says as not some good piece of advice, but as a guarantee on your life. And when he says, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. Jesus says if you spend your life trying to give it away for the sake of Jesus, you're going to get to the end of it and you'll have found it. In verse 26, it reads like this: what good will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? And I often wonder what people are willing to gamble with as they try to achieve success. And so I've asked a family if they could write us a letter here today, and they said, yeah, they would love to share a little bit about what God has done in their life. And we're going to hear from the Frosts, Joanne and Chris, and they write this letter that reads this way. It says, growing up and into our 30s, we never had Jesus in our lives. It wasn't until a few bad events happened that we found Jesus, or I guess Jesus found us. We started dating in our early 20s, and my husband stated many times that he would never go to church. Chris works as a paramedic and had experienced a few traumatizing events. He ended up shutting down and becoming distant. He wouldn't talk about how he was feeling, as it was either too hard or he didn't want me to be living through it as well. He became depressed and started seeing a counselor, which didn't really show much improvement. Things started to change when friends of ours recommended he meet with their pastor. To my surprise, Chris was eager to. The night that Chris met with the pastor, he phoned me right away afterwards and said he wasn't sure what it was about speaking and praying with the pastor, but he immediately felt a weight lift off his shoulders. And from that day forward, there was a dramatic change. And he began to be back to his happy self and open up with his feelings like he never had before. Chris says that it was after that day, meeting with the pastor, that he began to believe in Jesus, as he is the only one that could take away the pain that he experienced. Soon after Chris went through his hardship, we found out that we were pregnant, expecting our second child. But at the 12-week mark of the pregnancy, we found out that we had miscarried, which was devastating to us. This experience tested us and our newfound faith, but together with the help of friends and family and each other, and most of all God, we grew stronger in our faith and in our marriage. We started to attend Southgate only last August, which we immediately fell in love with because we were so new to the church scene and excited to grow more in our faith. We jumped in every opportunity to become more involved. We joined a life group as soon as we could, which has helped us bond with more people in similar stages of life. I volunteer in Baby Boulevard. Chris tends to build things at a moment's notice for the church, and we attend as many events as the church holds. We also both got baptized this past April, which was another experience which not many get to share with their spouse, but was another great experience that we've been blessed with. Since joining Southgate, we're now growing deeper in our faith every day. We now have 2 children, a boy and a girl, which both are miracles in our eyes, as the doctors weren't sure if we would be able to get pregnant before we had our first. I got laid off 3 weeks postpartum, but I trusted God and ended up with my dream job, working days only instead of shift work. Chris, he's just accepted a noon to midnight job instead of working nights half the time, so now we'll have more family time. And since accepting Jesus and laying down our life for him, our lives have gone from topsy-turvy to more focused, rewarding, fulfilled. We feel like we couldn't be more blessed than we are right now. See, that's Joanne and Chris's story of their life change and how they had to kind of get to the end of themselves and turn it over to Jesus. And that was in their 30s. But I guess in my experience, I meet with a lot of people when they're at the end of their life. And they're sitting in a hospital bed. And they're coming to the end and they ask to see a pastor, and I go meet with them. And many of them are reflecting on their lives. This is what I regret about my life. This is what I would have done differently. This is what I'm really happy about. more often than not, a lot of times I hear, I wish my life would have mattered more. See, what do you think Peter was thinking? The guy who walked on water. The guy who first pronounced Jesus as the Christ. What do you think he was thinking as he was getting crucified upside down? As he took his last breath upside down, nailed to an upside down cross. What do you think he was thinking as he reflected on walking on water, on calling Jesus the Christ, on seeing people being raised from the dead, seeing miracles and signs and wonders? Do you think as he took his last breath, do you think he was thinking, you know what? Oh man, I would have traded that all for a brand new Lexus. Or James. Let's take James for instance. James, the brother of Jesus. As he is reflecting, as he is standing on the very top of the roof of the temple, and he's looking down, knowing that in a few seconds he will be pushed off of the temple roof and fall to his death, being murdered for everyone to see. Do you think James, the brother of Jesus, who has witnessed Jesus and knows that he died and resurrected from the dead, do you think that James, the brother of Jesus, as he's about to take his last breath on earth, is saying, man, I would have traded all this away for a bigger house? See, those guys, in fact, every one of those guys that went with Jesus to Caesarea Philippi, they all had to ask the question, who is Jesus? And how does that play into my life? And what am I willing to lay down to make that a reality? And so my question for you is this, if you are a follower of Jesus here today, when is the last time you did something crazy for him? I mean, absolutely crazy. When is the last time you gave away a car? When is the last time that you gave away and you wrote a check that was absolutely terrifying? When's the last time that you showed up at someone's door and you absolutely blessed their socks off? When was the last time you traded your life for someone else? You gave your life away. Because let me tell you something, that hospital bed is going to be your bed at some point. And you are getting older. And the older that you get, the more boring you're getting. And Jesus says this is not meant to be boring. This is meant to be crazy. This is meant to be exciting. And so when's the last time you did something crazy? Hey, when's the last time that you forgave someone that never deserved forgiveness? Because that's what he did for you. He laid it all. See, I want you to wrestle with that this week, because none of the guys that Jesus talked to wasted their lives. They laid them down, and they said no to themselves. And listen, we're still talking about them here today. And so you've got one shot. Let's make it count.